Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley. Glad to be talking baseball with you once again because, well, the winter meetings are upon us. And it's great to finally see this happen. I'm excited to talk about the winter meetings. It's usually, when it gets underway, potentially the busiest part of the baseball season almost. Obviously talking about the offseason, and there is so much that could be happening. Now, obviously, COVID-19 forced the MLB to, move away from being in person like it usually is, and it's being held virtually. But even with that said, there's a good chance that we're going to be seeing a great deal of movement, news, information coming out from the MLB, whether it be what the 2021 season is going to be looking like, whether it be rules, regulations that teams are going to have to follow, some free agent moves, some trade moves. There's so many possible things that are going to be happening in this stretch. So I want to make sure that we don't waste any time talking about things that don't matter right now and just dive right into, well, what's the news that we're hearing? What's the rumors that we have going on? Along with diving into what could be some underrated free agents that we could be talking about in a short stretch because of everything that's happening. And of course, I want to make sure that since it is such a special time, that we dive into some of the probably biggest moves to ever happen when it comes in the winter meetings. So we have so much that we want to dive into, so much that we want to talk about, but we're going to start things off with a little news and noise, getting you caught up on all 30 MLB teams, what's going on around the league, at least deals that have been finalized. And we're going to start things off with me finally being so happy. I can't believe it has officially happened. I've been just clamoring for this, reaching out, saying, hello, Texas Rangers. Let's make sure we trade Lance Lynn and get some actual value here. Well, somebody on the other line was listening because he has been on the move, and I couldn't come up with many better options than him going to the Chicago White Sox. Yes, the Lance Lynn trade finally happening here, going over, and I think this is a beautiful, great move. I think this is absolutely outstanding. It's a team that needed some starting pitching depth moves helps. Now, we realize that Dallas Keuchel ended up being a great move for the White Sox last year. Lucas Giolito is someone that was also a solid move as well. And this one is a cheap contract to get in another guy to help boost that rotation. So Lance Lynn going from the Rangers. Righty Dane Dunning is heading back to Texas in return. Rangers are also receive a second player, kind of to be named. Another young pitcher is what we're expecting it to be. Now, Lynn signed a one-year deal contract way back with the Twins in 2017. Then went on to another 3-year, $30 million contract with the Rangers in 2019. And he has just been terrific on this short-term deal. 3.57 ERA, 10.31 strikeouts per 9 innings. Over that stretch, he's been great. And at 33 years old, 1 year left, $10 million, it's a cheap buy-in. It's actually at $8 million, I believe, if it's just base salary. And the White Sox coming off a playoff berth, why not go in? And some people have been talking about it being an effective number 3 pitcher, but if he is pitching up to his potential, which he did last year, he was more than a number 3. I mean, he was an ace for the Rangers. He was the only thing that was really positive them. And like we said, going with Giolito, going with Keuchel, and then other guys like Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, there's going to be some pitching depth building here. And so I really am happy about this move, excited. I'm excited that the Rangers are kind of not wasting an opportunity here, because that's what happened at the trade deadline. That's what happened in the past with them. They don't have a direct future right now. So move on from Lynn, try to acquire something really great for both sides. I'm happy to see it happen. And it's funny because this is going to be a reunion between Lance Lynn and Tony La Russa with the White Sox. They were originally together with the St. Louis Cardinals. And Lynn kind of flat out said I'm hoping this reunion leads to another World Series title. And very excited to see it all play out. So that's great. Some other moves that ended up happening: the Kansas City Royals and veteran first baseman Carlos Santana have agreed to a 2-year contract. And this is a big move in the sense of having some clubhouse leadership. The Royals, this team, it's going to be young. A lot of question marks, really all over the place. The Royals have actually been one of the few teams that have been making moves kind of all over the place while it's been a very slow offseason. Deal was for $17 million over the 2 years. 34-year-old Santana, not too long ago, we saw him in an all-star game for Cleveland, and he hit 281, 34 home runs, 93 RBIs just 2 seasons ago. Last year, obviously, was much more of a struggle, but this is not something that we didn't see with a lot of players. Batted 199 with 8 homers and 30 RBIs, was a big reason why the Indians' offense struggled so mightily. And he played in all 60 games, which is good. But the Indians just decided, hey, this $17.5 million option for 1 season is not enough. So looks like that $17 million is going to be stretched out over 2 with the Royals. So Santana agreed to a deal. I thought he was going to be someone intriguing, a few more contenders. We've talked about it before. The corner spots, first base and third base, not something that's very intriguing for at least power moves, star depth. It's not much there when it comes to the free agent market. So Santana, I thought, was at least going to continue to be an interesting name for a team that's trying to get a low buy with high potential. And the Royals are going to be the team that happens to get him. I would not be shocked if from here he gets to be a trade chip halfway through the season. Now, I at a 34-year-old going to the Royals, who are most likely not contending, there's a good chance that it's just, hey, come in here, not a lot of pressure, try to perform, we'll move you to someone to see if you can go win a ring. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the idea, the whole thought process, everything going on here. But obviously, that's down the road. But for the time being, the Royals got a player with a lot of upside, a veteran, a guy who's going to help their clubhouse, at least in the short term. And that's a good thing for this Royals team. So I look at it as a smart move. No problems with it. Might as well. And Santana's also, at the same time, he's staying in the American League Central. I mean, obviously been a part of the Indians for 10 seasons. He's been around. Why not stick around with the guys, the teams you know? Going to maybe make things a little bit easier as he moves away from Cleveland. So good for him on that one. Going back to the White Sox, they also had another free agent move today. Chicago White Sox and Adam Eaton agreed to a 1-year, $7 million deal, which also has a club option for 2022 at $8.5 million. Eaton is expected to be the everyday right fielder for the White Sox moving forward, and this was reported by NBC Sports Chicago. Big-time outfielder options are out there. Michael Brantley, Jock Peterson, and ultimately decided to go with Eaton. At 32 years old, he had a $1.5 million buyout from the Nationals, and he declined his option. Well, the Nationals declined the option for the $10.5 million for 2021. Another guy that struggled a little bit. I mean, hit 226, 4 home runs, 17 RBIs, so nothing exceptional. The last time we really saw Eaton bringing some productive play was in the 2019 World Series for the Nationals, where he batted .320, hit a couple homers, and helped in getting Washington their first ever title. So for 4 seasons, though, over the stretch, Eaton's been all right, around 280, 26 home runs, 112 RBIs. He was traded from the White Sox, to Washington, and that was to get Lucas Giolito. So it's kind of funny how this whole thing goes a little bit full circle in the whole situation. Even Dane Dunning, who was a guy that was another person that came in that trade, was also sent out for Lance Lynn. So a lot of connections here happening today. And before that, Eden had a great time with the White Sox as well. I mean, he had batted .290, 29 home runs, 150 RBIs with 3 seasons with the White Sox. So stepping in, if he gets back to what he was, a nice little depth addition for the White Sox moving forward. Good move all around. The team's just getting better. You're seeing a few teams go all in, trying to build together a squad, even in some of these uncertain times with how contracts and how money's going to work out next year. So exciting enough that we are seeing some teams go in, and the White Sox are not really wasting any time whatsoever. One last bit of trade news. The Los Angeles Angels are going to get closer Raisel Iglesias from the Cincinnati Reds for right-handed reliever Noah Ramirez and a player to be named later, or some cash considerations. This was announced on Monday during the first day of the virtual winter meetings. Now, Iglesias has saved 92 games from 2017 to 2019. Arguably, his best season was last year, though. 2.74 ERA, 0.91 WHIP, striking out 31 batters, walking only 5 in 23 innings. 30-year-old, going to be a great move. The pitching help is needed for the Angels. I've been kind of pushing for, hey, we got to get some starter help. That may still be down the line. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some other moves coming, but at least it's a start. We know the offensive production that is there for the Angels. I don't have to introduce you to Mr. Trout, Rendon, and company there in LA. But it's all about, can we do anything with the pitching to stop people from scoring on us? So I like this, a good move in the sense of we're going to get a little bit of bullpen help and ultimately hope the team pushes forward because of this. So bravo to the Angels taking the first step forward and some help that you very much need. And then lastly, for some news, first baseman Freddie Freeman of the Braves, first baseman Jose Abreu of the Chicago White Sox have both won the Hank Aaron Awards as the most outstanding offensive performers in each of their respective leagues, and this is voted on by MLB.com. Now, Freddie Freeman was great, winning the National League MVP, batting .341, on base percentage .462. Big part of why the Braves had one of the best offenses in baseball last year. That is for certain. And then Jose Abreu, well, he batted .317 with 19 homers and 60 RBIs during the shortened season. Also a big part of why Chicago White Sox broke a massive playoff drought and eventually went on to be one of the representatives in the American League and a top team in the American League Central, someone who I believe is going to be very favored moving forward into next year. So congratulations to those two. A very great award, very deserving. Hey, even though we had a shortened 60-game season, you got to look at these numbers and be impressed with what they did. They were both great last year, so good for those guys. So that's going to be it for our news and noise around the league. We're going to take one quick break here, and then we're going to come back and talk about the rumor mill. What's the updated word we're hearing around trade targets, free agents, and everywhere in the MLB here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
No surprise here. with the winter meetings happening, the rumor mills obviously have picked up a little bit. We're starting to get a lot more information happening across the league with a lot of teams showing interest in trade targets, free agent targets. Everything's really just starting to pick up a little bit. So we want to make sure that we're kind of updating you guys as we go along because this week is very fluid. There is so much happening. And if you blink, you might just miss something. So it's a great chance for us to be talking about it. And while we dove into the White Sox, what seems like enough in the first segment, things don't necessarily seem to be done. So they added Lance Lynn, they added Adam Eden, and there's belief that some possible other moves could be coming. This is per the Athletics' Jason Stark. The White Sox are still in on Michael Brantley and are also considering adding another starting pitcher as well. And now, necessarily, who could that pitcher be? Up in the air. There's very few options that are top end available. I mean, Trevor Bauer really kind of is it. And then after that, it's a lot of question marks, I would say, to put it nicely afterwards. Upside plays, potentially. Guys are going to buy low on and hope that they turn things around, whether it be like a Corey Kluber or a Chris Archer. A lot of options out there. But Michael Brantley being a name mentioned is interesting because that's one of our few outfielder options that a lot of teams are probably still looking at. And while he's not the top outfield option that we could have, he's not Ozuna and Springer. He's still going to be a solid player that would help with some veteran leadership and also, hey, this guy has kind of been to the World Series. He's been there before. He's played at a high level. So that's probably why some White Sox interest is coming in there. We can't forget that Alex Colomé is also a free agent, the back end of their bullpen. There was some talks that maybe the White Sox have their sights on Liam Hendriks, who is a closer that I like more than Colomé because of the strikeouts. If you're going to be my guy at the back end of a bullpen, and while Colomé has been great and done a lot of great things, he doesn't strike out a lot of players. Hendricks has turned his game to be a strikeout power pitcher at the end, making guys miss, making it hard to hit. Baseball can be a fluky game, guys. It happens. Contact and putting the ball in play can lead to bad things happening. So why wouldn't I want the best possible closer for strikeouts there? But there also will be other options. Brad Hand, Archie Bradley, Kirby Yates, Roberto Ozuna. There's options. So don't be surprised if we see the White Sox getting in on one of these bullpen arms as well. Something also we're seeing, our power team that we think is going to be the one making many moves, at least in the big name market, is the New York Mets. And it looks like right now, and this is coming from ESPN's Buster Olney, the Mets appear to be the favorites for George Springer. So, like we said before, one of our top outfielder prospects, this would be the big splash, at least the one of maybe many coming. We've seen the Mets connected to other players like Real Muto, James McCann, definitely going to be someone in that catcher market. But it seems like George Springer, we talked about before, could be one of the priorities for the Mets. And on top of that, we're starting to see and hear more about Trevor Bauer potentially having some interest in the Mets as well. I mean, and this is coming right from Bauer's mouth. He has been making the connections. He's been talking about it. And I sit here as just a baseball pitcher fan. I pitched growing up, loved it. It was my thing. The idea of Jacob deGrom, Trevor Bauer, hopefully a healthy Noah Syndergaard, and then, oh yeah, your fourth guy is Marcus Stroman. Yeah, sign me up. Sign me up for all of that potential. I'd be all for it. Not saying it's going to happen, not predicting it, but I would be all for it. I'd be excited as could possibly be. So, come on, Mets. Why not? Why not? Moving over to the American League East from the NL East, I'd like to talk about those Toronto Blue Jays, the young, fun team. They're another one that has just been placed in a lot of these rumors with a lot of potential there. And from last season, they picked up an ace pitcher in Hyun-Jin Ryu. finished third place in the 2020 AL Cy Young Award. And it's starting to look like that guy isn't there just to pitch. He might be a top-notch recruiter for Toronto right now. And that's not something I was expecting. But ESPN is also reporting that Ryu sat down for dinner with a star of the KBO League, shortstop Hae-Seung Kim, who was just recently posted by his team in the KBO. And a lot of people believe that he is potentially one of the best shortstops available. There's interesting names that are out there when it comes to shortstop, like Marcus Semien, Didi Gregorius, and Jordan Simmons. But the posting of Hae-Seung Kim caught a lot of people's attentions, and they think he's going to be of value. Now, he can't be signed until January 1st, so that's one thing that puts a little bit of a damper in this. But Kim is coming off one of his best seasons. Hit 30 home runs. 300 would have been impressive. 921 OPS. Now, Bo Bichette is a very promising shortstop moving forward with the Blue Jays. But they've also been linked to Francisco Lindor too. So it makes you wonder if they're comfortable or Bichette is comfortable with moving position-wise. We know that Kevin Biggio can play second base. He can play in the outfield. We know Bichette can move to third base. There's some flexibility there, and ultimately that helps keep Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first. So they're seeming to be all in on the shortstop market. And while the Lindor trade is one that might be a little bit more exciting, the move for Kim would be a great one as well. And it might be a little bit cheaper if the Blue Jays want to make multiple moves. So possible to see this moving forward. I like it. Ryu coming in, pitching well, recruiting. The Blue Jays just trying to sneak in and be a tough team. They got a big hill to climb, all right? The Yankees and the Rays are two very good teams. And this Blue Jays team, exciting, young, they want to compete. They want to be in this. I am not sure that it's going to be 100% next year, but it's smart to try and build this team now while a lot of your young, promising talent is on cheap contracts and arbitration years. So, bravo, Toronto. I think they're making the smart moves. So, we'll say that we're going to keep up to date on this one. But again, he can't sign until January 1st. So, there's a lot that could happen before that. So, we'll see where that one goes. But staying in that American League East, the New York Yankees very much want to re-sign DJ LeMahieu. And that is believed to be the top priority for the Yanks this offseason. But it seems that they might have a limit in what they actually want to pay to bring him back. And I find this interesting in a guy who has been so phenomenal for you, one of the best bats over the last 2 years. That batting average is incredibly high. Finding players that hit all over the field, use the entire field to bat, it just feels so rare. And batting .364 last year with 10 home runs, 71 hits, 27 RBIs, 1.011 OPS. This guy was a top staple of their batting order so that their power guys behind could swing and bring in runs. And I think it's just the fact that it's the Yankees. The idea of them being outbid on anything makes me pause. It makes me really pause. But this is also coming from ESPN's Buster Olney. He's getting a sense that they have a set price, the Yankees do, for LeMahieu, and they don't want to go past it. And it's comparable to the situation that they had with Robinson Cano after the 2013 season. Yeah, they want to keep him. Yeah, they want him to stick around, but they're setting a dollar amount, and they're saying, we're not going past that. We're staying right here. We're not going to be the one to overpay. And ultimately, that leads me to think there's most likely a backup plan here. If LeMahieu walks, we need to have something else ready to jump on. And what that is, who knows? They may be looking for some flexibility plays similar to the Blue Jays and a lot of different options they could bring in. But again, outbid Yankees. I don't see those two usually going together, so it kind of really sticks with you for sure. And the Yankees, they're a team that really needs some pitching help. So hey, maybe what they should be doing is giving a call to the Cincinnati Reds, because it seems like several teams have been showing off Sonny Gray. Now, Sonny Gray returning to the Yankees might not be likely, but it looks like the Reds are going to continue to gauge the trade market for Sonny Gray. It's a surprising move here. A lot of people believe that the Reds are not getting Trevor Bauer back. That seems to be, I don't want to say universally agreed upon, but it seems like it's the chatter at the moment. So they have Sonny Gray on the trading block, which is really one of their top pitchers who, at least through the first, let's say about 3/4 of the season, was phenomenal last year. And it's not a crazy expensive deal. He's going to get $20 million next year. But he had a 3.07 ERA, almost 11 strikeouts per 9 innings in his 2 seasons with Cincinnati. So $20 million for that, it's not bad. It's not bad. That's a top-notch starting pitcher. It seems that the Reds have been working on trying to sign some free agent starting pitchers while discussing Sonny Gray trades. But they're also prioritizing looking at shortstop position as well. We've heard the rumors of Francisco Lindor. They might be checking in the market on Trevor Story a little bit, but also Didi Gregorius has been a guy that's been brought up with the Reds as well. They're trying to upgrade in the fielding position, but I don't necessarily understand the downgrade in starting pitching, especially when you lose your Cy Young pitcher. So this is one where I think it might be a little more noise than actual news. At least this is kind of the gut feel. I don't understand why you're trying to upgrade somewhere but then downgrade somewhere else. And the whole NL Central is just kind of interesting. Like, what's happening? Well, we know the Pirates are rebuilding. The Reds thought they were competitive last offseason. The Brewers are trying to really maintain salary. The Cardinals need to put an offense together. And the Cubs, they have a lot of contract issues coming their way, and more guys might be on the move. So I think the Reds are just trying to view all options. I think that's the case. But they still believe they might be competitive and have a chance to make a push to the postseason next year. So we'll see what happens with that. Moving over to my team, those Boston Red Sox. Jackie Bradley Jr. is not quite counting out a reunion. At least that's what we're hearing from the Red Sox GM, Brian O'Halloran. Free agent center fielder could still return, and he stated on Monday that he's still on our radar. What I love about Bradley Jr., defensively, he's as good as he gets. Entire 8-year career has been with the Red Sox. All-Star in 2016, Gold Glove Award for Boston when they won the World Series in 2018. Guy's got a cannon. I've seen him make some absolutely ridiculous throws from the outfield, along with all of the ground that he covers. He's phenomenal. If you're going to play in the outfield in Fenway, man, you got to be good. I just put it at that. And right and left field, it's an adjustment. In center, you want to cover a lot of ground. Last year was one of Bradley's best offensive seasons. Hit 283, 7 home runs, 22 RBIs, in 55 games. If I'm getting back that Jackie Bradley Jr., I'm excited. I'm all for it. But as a guy who's slumped at the plate in recent years as well, I do have a little caution in overpaying, especially when I know all of the issues that we have when it comes to the pitching department. So that's just my thoughts on that one, as not only someone reporting on it, but also as someone as a fan. And lastly, we got one more guy that was posted to potentially be a big fish jumping over to the MLB. The Yomiuri Giants of the Nippon Professional Baseball League in Japan posted right-hander Tomoyuki Sugano. The deadline for Sugano to reach an agreement with a major league club is 5 o'clock on January 7th. And he's someone that's gaining a lot of interest because some people think he is the guy right behind Trevor Bauer. Now, 31 years old, there's already interest, it seems like, from the Padres, Giants, Yankees, Red Sox, among others. And it's no surprise. Sugano who spent 8 seasons in the Nippon Professional Baseball League, posted a 2.34 ERA with 1,216 strikeouts in 1,362 innings. Solid numbers. 2-time award winner of what's technically their Cy Young over there. Top starting pitcher. So we have a few interesting names coming over. We didn't know how much more we could add to this free agent class with all of the guys that joined last Wednesday because of not having agreements with their teams. And now with a few more jumping ship from foreign leagues, this is just getting to be more and more exciting. So I'm keeping my eyes on this, and these winter meetings, a lot can happen. Things could go quickly, even if it's just being done remotely, online, over computers. We're going to get some noise. Stuff is going to happen, but that's what we have updated so far when it comes to the rumor mill. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to take the time to dive into some of the underrated free agents that are out there on the market. There was a fun article. Want to dive into this up next here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
When it comes to transaction periods, trades, free agency, whatever you want to have it, we have to talk about sometimes the biggest moves are not the biggest names. It's going to be those underrated free agents that are just flat out better players than you think. They have the ability to do great stuff for you. And that's why I want to talk about some position players that I think are going to end up mattering when it comes to who is going where, what team has signed what player. And so I want to take a time to talk about 11 players in particular. This was a great article. MLB.com talked about this as well. I was diving into this. I mean, if you've been listening, following along, I've been someone that's been looking at some guys that I think are going to be underrated signings. They're not the big name. They're not the one that's most excited. But when you look at their past production, they are going to be something to help you out. So wanted to dive into this, give you some names to be watching, especially as this week kind of moves along. And when it comes to the catching market, there really has been 3 names that have been talked about. Real Muto, James McCann, Yadier Molina. Those are the exciting ones. A stud player in Real Muto, a guy who's been steady in McCann, and the vet that's been around forever. But I think one that is going to be very exciting is the newly non-tendered Kurt Caselli, who was just let go by the Cincinnati Reds. Over the last 2 seasons, his WAR, in which I know can be a flawed stat from time to time, but still, his wins above replacement is 1.8. And that is 5th among all free agent catchers. That's above Molina. And in that time, batting has not been as big of an issue. Now, 244, is that amazing? No, but in today's MLB, that's still pretty solid. Above average in framing skills. So defensively, he's going to help you behind the plate a little bit. If he gets at-bats against left-handers, whom he has his best career OPS, then you're going to be sitting in pretty good shape. I don't know if he is going to be your everyday guy, but if you're platooning behind the plate, I don't think this is a bad move. And it's something that we would need to look into if you're looking for depth and help at the catcher position, which is something that quite a few teams could be using. Hey, knock knock, New York Yankees, this might be a good signing for you. Just saying. Going over to first base, hey, bummer, but this guy's already gone. Carlos Santana, we've talked about this, so I'm not going to go too crazy in this. He was an all-star in 2019, all right? Last year was a bummer of a year. He jumped down. I get that. But the thing that is so absolutely exciting about Carlos Santana, as a guy who's playing first base, who has a potential to give you power numbers, he gets on base with walks. Switch hitter, 18.4% walk rate. That is an elite statistic, a high number. And that's leading to what many believe to be a potential bounce back season. You can look at batting average a lot. I like looking at it too, of course. Batting average is something, but there is some luck involved with batting average. And slugging percentage and on base percentage can tell you more of a story. And when you walk as much as Santana does, it might have just been some bad luck last year playing in a short season. He could have brought things back. So, Carlos Santana to the Royals, lucky for them. I wanted to bring it up because he is a solid signing for them. Going around the infield, I'm going to go to that other corner spot, and we're going to talk about Jake Lamb. 165 games played over the last 3 years. Not very healthy. Let's just say that. But the corner spots are not great. 36-year-old Justin Turner, he might be the biggest name at third base. That's not a lot of great options. Lamb just turned 30, and even with all the issues when it comes to him being healthy, 345 on base percentage, 498 slugging in 2016-2017. Not that far removed. There's some slight potential, buy low potential there. Now, the Oakland A's traded for him in September of 2020. Signed him up, actually. He was released by the Diamondbacks. And in 49 at-bats last year, an all right OPS. Now, I'm not saying that you go out and you're going to sign him and be like, hey, this is our everyday starter as well. But he had some positive signs last year in a market where third base is not great. So he might be worth a look, a nod, potentially. Sliding over to shortstop, Jurickson Profar. Okay, we know the top names. Simeon, Gregorius, Simmons. Okay, those are the guys that we're excited for. We know next year, very exciting shortstop market. Okay, Lindor, Trevor Story, Seager, Carlos Correa. Okay, they're there. All very interesting. Profar is a name that you can look at for your discount buyers. Now, he hasn't been an everyday shortstop, but he needs to be someone we're looking at here, especially when it thins out so quickly after the names that we know are available this year. Injury trouble as well. I know, not something that you love to see, but the former number one overall prospect, he's valuable, and he's going to be a good utility player for any team that's willing to give him a chance. Last 3 years, he has been above a league average OPS. 20 home runs in 2018 and 19. Was on pace for 20 homers again in 2020. He played a full season. He's played at every infield spot. He's played some left field. And there's some streaky hittingness in there, but it's enough production. And by the way, he's only 28. So he's still young. I know the scary thing for a lot of teams is once you get over the age of 30. But if he's not necessarily your all-time commitment starter everywhere, he's just going to be a utility guy who plays around and can give guys breaks. He's an interesting name. Staying in that infield, another interesting name is going to be Cesar Hernandez, another disciplined hitter. Okay, low contact, I get that, but low strikeouts. He's going to walk for you. You can't get a top-notch second baseman, which that actually is a spot where there's some fun depth with LeMahieu, Tommy La Stella, Colton Wong. But Cesar Hernandez is a guy that could play for you, right? Switch hitter, speed on there. He's going to give you some defense, and he's going to be cheap. Last 2 seasons with Philadelphia and Cleveland, batted .280. Above average on the base paths, 1.9 WAR. Going to be solid production. It's a player that it should intrigue a few teams. And like I said, second base is kind of loaded. There's a lot of names there. This could be a guy that you get on the cheap that really could help a team out. Moving to the outfield, I'm going to start in center field because I talked about Brian Goodwin. This was one that surprised me when it happened, that he didn't get a qualified offer. And he reminds me of Jackie Bradley Jr. Okay. Underrated player is what Brian Goodwin is. And he's not on the top 25 free agent list for a lot of people. I get that. I get that. But you need to give him a little bit of a nod. With the Angels in his last 2 seasons, Goodwin batted .258, 21 home runs, 36 doubles, 4 triples. Striking out is his problem, all right? But he's going to give you good defense in the outfield. He's going to give you consistent play. You know what he is. The Reds moved on very quickly from him. I'm just surprising. When you acquire a guy and you just move on, he's had the ability to prove that he can be an everyday player. And there's just a lot there. I feel like he's going to be someone that can step up and give you more production than what we've seen in the past. I mean, they put it well on MLB.com. He's had a frustrating start to his big league career, and you just look at him and you think there's more there. There is more there for sure. Moving over to another outfield prospect, Robbie Grossman. And this is a guy who was a big part of the Oakland A's team succeeding last year. 126 weighted runs created, 26% better than the league. He's 23rd among all qualified outfielders, 8th in outfield outs above average. You probably don't even notice that he's out there, but he's going to help you out in a great situation in the outfield. Defensively, he's solid. Now, the likelihood of him batting .482 and a slugging percentage again, that's slugging, so putting the ball in play, not great. But he is someone that is also going to be getting on base. And it's going to be a common trend with a lot of these guys here. That's funny. You talk about the Oakland A's, it just makes me think of Billy Bean Moneyball. Pointing at you, what does he do? He gets on base. .350 on base percentage and more than 2,700 plate appearances in a career. There is value to getting on base. I know people love swinging for the fences. I know the statistics, the averages of guys getting around, scoring from each spot in the amount of outs. I get it. But if you don't get these players on the base pass, what does it all ultimately matter? So I think with Grossman being able to get on base, doesn't strike out as much, that's something that creates value. And one last outfielder to talk about. Well, Hunter Renfroe being let go by our American League champ, Tampa Bay Rays. He was acquired in that Tommy Pham trade from the Padres last year. Definitely not up to the expectations that they had. .216 batting average to .156 between the 2 years. On base percentage went from .289 to .252. Slugging percentage dropped. And you're probably like, hey, what's the sell here? What's the sell? I like the fact that he hits the ball hard when he hits it. Hard hit percentage is something that a lot of teams get excited about, and that's why I think Renfroe is going to have a job somewhere. Because when you hit the ball hard, you're more likely to find gaps, more likely to be opportunities. 2019, hit 33 home runs, 19 doubles with that high hit percentage. And he's a good defender. Okay? He has the ability to help you out defensively, and he's not going to hurt you in that situation. And if things start to click in the other direction, along with his hard hit percentage, he has the chance to pop off a little bit and be a nice value signing. Nice value signing from the outfield. So that's something to say. Last guy I really want to talk about, and there was more in this article, but the last guy that I really want to talk about is the starting pitcher, and Garrett Richards, because this is a tough starting pitching market. You know Bauer is great. I get it. But afterwards, it's a lot of guys like, maybe. Odorizzi, Jose Quintilla, Corey Kluber, James Paxton. Some guys we talked about before. And they may or may not pay off. But Garrett Richards is a guy that is interesting, as he has been recovering from some elbow issues that began in 2016. He had Tommy John surgery in 2018. He looked like he was going to be a stud starter for the Angels, which is something they desperately needed. He was 28 and 16 with a 3.18 ERA from 2014 to 2015. Got picked up by the Padres in 2019 as someone they tried to rebuild his career, revamp him up. 17 appearances, 4.65 ERA out of him. Okay. Fastball's averaging around 95 miles per hour this year. That's the 15th highest of any pitcher, with at least 750 pitches thrown. The other thing that's loved about it, his fastball has a very great spin rate. And his curveball was up there as well, which a lot of people that are looking for pitching prospects, spin rate is huge because that's helping get outs, making them harder to hit. And the measurements are saying that Richards has some potential to be very great, very good if things start clicking. And in a group of guys that you're looking at that are hit or miss prospects, you have to try and find something that makes one stick out over the others. And for Richards, it's that spin rate. It might be the reason that he has a chance to pan out. Again, all of these moves, they're buy lows. You're not breaking the bank for any of these players. It's not happening. But if you want to take a chance somewhere, you need a little depth in a spot, and you want to play the upside potential game, these are those names. These are those names that are going to be intriguing to you. So that's going to be it for talking about some of these underrated free agents. We're going to take one last break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about some of my favorite all-time moves from the winter meetings. And if you have never listened to these or dug into these, we have some doozies coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Winter meetings, winter meetings, winter meetings. This is where the stuff happens. And some of the biggest moves of all time. Now, I could go through this and I could make a long, elaborate, crazy list. But I decided to narrow it down. I'm down to what are 8 of the all-time winter meetings moves. And now I'm going to be honest. Some of these I threw in there because I wanted to talk about relevancy to recent years. Some of these are big all-time great names, and darn it, I snuck one in there just because it meant a lot to me as a fan seeing a player in a specific situation. But I don't have these in a top 8 order, okay? I'm going to be honest. It was hard for me to say one is all that much better than the other. So I'm just going to stick with the 8, and if you want to rank them yourself, hey, go for it. I'm not quite there. I would need more time to sit down, think about these, and go long-term on all of these, but all the same, all fun. So the first one I have to talk about, the Toronto Blue Jays in 1990 at the winter meetings pulled off one of the biggest blockbusters where they acquired Roberto Alomar and Joe Carter. And this was the move that took the Blue Jays and elevated them as a team. Now, they won a World Series in 1992 and 1993. Big reason why. Future Hall of Famer in this trade, when you're pulling one of those in, you're doing pretty good. And the history of this trade is it was pretty dividing. Blue Jays fans were a little unsure about this, as the guys that were sent out, Fred McGriff and Tony Fernandez, were considered franchise players, fan favorites. They didn't want to see these guys go. And it began a collection of moves that the Blue Jays were able to build World Series teams. And this just was the big one. It more came after this, but this was the big one here. When you add Roberto Alomar and Joe Carter, that is just addition to a team, especially when we know how great of players these ended up becoming down the line. Trades aren't always the thing you're looking for in these winter meetings, but when they happen, they have a way to be just very, very, very big. The next one that I have here, this is fan made, but I have to go in this. All right. The Red Sox made one of their best signings in December 19th of 2000 when they signed Manny Ramirez to an 8-year, $160 million deal. Not only did they take Manny away from a Cleveland Indians team that, when you look at that roster, we should be remembering them a lot better. That team was loaded. But this was a move that ultimately joined Manny Ramirez with David Ortiz and created one of the best 1-2 punches of guys sitting in the middle of your order batting 3-4. It's up there. It's up there. You can argue a lot of different names. I'm not going to say you're wrong. This is another conversation for another day. But Manny Ramirez, David Ortiz in their prime was one of the best. One of the best. And ultimately, it led to World Series in 2004, 2007. Ramirez played over 1,000 games with Boston, batting .312, 274 home runs, 868 RBIs. That's the production they were expecting. They got it all. And not to, forget, but Manny Ramirez, Manny being Manny, this guy is kind of entertaining. He did a lot of great things in the outfield. He's even entertaining to this day. You had the chance to see it. There's a video circulating of him right now running into a guy, I believe it was in Australia, wearing a Boston Red Sox hat, and he was asking him who's his favorite Boston player of all time, and the guy had no clue who he even was. So still entertaining to this day. It doesn't stop with Manny Ramirez. Going back to big-time trades, well, he's still playing today. When he retires, he's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Miguel Cabrera being sent over in a blockbuster trade to the Detroit Tigers. Now, I'm sure Marlins fans do not love talking about this one at all. I mean, at the time, it was a little surprising. He wanted to get paid. He wanted to move on. But Miguel Cabrera and Dontrelle Willis were just two very exciting players for a Marlins franchise. And looking back, some of the names sent back, like Cameron Maybin, quality player, fine. Andrew Miller, good arm out of the bullpen. The Marlins got some stuff back. They just didn't really flourish with the Marlins. And it was known at the time. Cabrera was going to be traded. It was no secret. He was on the market. He was available. The thing here that was so fun, that was so surprising, is the Tigers were a surprise team that jumped in on this. And it came out of nowhere. It came up quick. And then all of a sudden, there it is. Boom, Miguel Cabrera is a Detroit Tiger. And it allowed for the Tigers to make, a few more moves. They were competitive. Now, they never won a World Series, but they put together some good teams, some great fun teams, and allowed for manager Jim Leyland to go out and have some quality teams. Cabrera became a Triple Crown winner, 2-time MVP, 4-time batting champion in Detroit. He's going to go down as one of the best players for the Tigers, a big-time move. And like I said, Maybin and Miller are both productive, but they just didn't do it in Florida. It's just interesting how it all ended up panning out. Miguel Cabrera trade. big, big, big move happening there. But let's dive back. We got to go back to some actual free agent moves. And I told you about my love for pitchers before, and I got to come back to this guy because my love for Greg Maddux as a pitcher is high. I value what he could do. And in the 1992 winter meetings, National League Cy Young Award winner Greg Maddux, a lot thought he was destined to be a New York Yankee. And meetings were happening. It seemed like it was going to come to be. But the $34 million offer that was given to Greg Maddux was just not enough as he decided to accept a 5-year, $28 million deal with the Atlanta Braves. Braves had won back-to-back National League pennants, and Maddux thought signing there was going to give him the best chance to win a World Series. And he ended up going on to win his 4th consecutive National League Cy Young Award winner in 1995. Just great, great stuff. He was a part of a great rotation for the Atlanta Braves. And it ultimately is going to be something he won't regret because he won that World Series. Atlanta Braves taking over the Cleveland Indians 4-2. There again is that Indians team that we should be talking about because they were so great. I always sit here and wonder, like, the more money going to some of these Yankees teams, because the Yankees were great in the 90s too. So let's not pretend that he ultimately made the best move. But coming together, Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux, it's one of the best combos, one of the best 1-2 punches. I mean, John Smoltz on that team as well. I'm saying great way too many times, but I mean, there's no other amazing ways for me to say it. Like, what Maddux did was the move to put together one of the best rotations, and it was helpful. The Braves, again, 91, 92, they were pennant winners. They lost to the Twins, lost to the Blue Jays. It ended up working out for them in the long term. So Greg Maddux making the move to be a part of the Atlanta Braves. Staying in that National League East, Pete Rose, a guy, we could talk about a lot of things with Pete Rose, but the one thing that maybe isn't brought up enough is the fact that the Phillies needed some sort of bump to their roster after losing 3 consecutive NLCSs from 1976 to 78. And they were able to make the move to get Pete Rose because they thought that was ultimately going to be the help. Signing him up at the winter meetings was an interesting chase, the story of this one. And how it all ended up coming to be is also interesting in the whole thing. The worst offer came from the Phillies. And he remained interested in the team. And funny enough, at the time, Pete Rose's agent told the Phillies if they found an extra $100,000 per season, he could convince Rose to sign there. So their executive vice president, Bill Giles, got a TV station which broadcast the Phillies game to kick in $600,000 over the next 4 years to help pay Pete Rose's salary, so that he got the 4-year, $3.24 million contract, which he ended up ultimately signing. I just love the story there. They went to their broadcast partner, and that's where the money came from. Like, come on. That wouldn't happen today. We wouldn't hear that story today, I feel like. And if it did happen, at least we wouldn't hear about it till many years later. Let's go back to another trade. Cincinnati Reds. Big Red Machine. You may have heard of them. Now, they made a move in which they traded away, at the time, Lee May, guy who hit 39 home runs, 98 RBIs in the 1971 season. But that year, the Reds finished 4th in the National League West after winning the pennant in 1970. So, they ended up going to do a blockbuster deal that brought Joe Morgan to Cincinnati and pushed them to become what the Big Red Machine is known as today. MVP winner in 75 and 76. Those were the years that Cincinnati won World Series titles. Reds all-time leader with 406 steals, hit 152 home runs, 5 Gold Gloves. All-time great. Many people know him for in his broadcasting, he was better as a player. And his number 8 retired, recently passed away. Joe Morgan's just so many great things. What a big, big winter meetings move. When that's getting you titles, wow. What more can you say about it? Now, this next one's a little bit of a cheat. It's a little bit of a cheat, and I'll tell you why. The Rule 5 draft, which is going to happen at these winter meetings, that is something that's been happening at the winter meetings for quite some time now. But way, way, way back in the day, it didn't necessarily always happen there. But I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to tie it in. Because in 1954, the LA Dodgers let one of the best players of all time walk away in the Rule 5 draft as the Pittsburgh Pirates snuck in and took away Roberto Clemente. And even though the Dodgers won a lot of World Series while Clemente was in Pittsburgh, it's just one of those what if moments. What if Clemente's greatness and his great play wasn't just in Pittsburgh, but on some absolutely loaded Dodgers teams? That would be a great deal of fun. And the last one I have here, just a personal favorite. I've been doing a lot of digging recently into the career of Barry Bonds just because I find a lot of the numbers absolutely astonishing with everything he's done. And in 1992, in the winter meetings, Barry Bonds made a big decision and a big move with his next team. And the Giants, the San Francisco Giants, were just bought, and they needed to make a big move in the sense that they didn't want to move the franchise. And there was talks about them relocating to Florida, so they noted that they had to make a big move in signing a player so that they could stay. And Barry Bonds was that guy. He got a 6-year, $43.75 million deal, which was then the richest contract in baseball. A lot of money, but they said, at the time, it's a lot of money, but there's only one Barry Bonds. And they ended up being right on that one because the return on everything that Bonds did for that team and selling tickets and everything, whether you agree about off-the-field stuff that we know of, it's Barry freaking Bonds, And his dad, Bobby, played for the Giants. His godfather, Willie Mays, played for the Giants. It only made too much sense to go there. And 586 home runs over 15 seasons. All-time home run leader. It's just a great story. Great story how it all worked out. So, those are just some. Like I said, eight of the winter meetings moves. There was so much that has happened here. So it's fun to dive into it. But those are just some of my personal favorites that I had to go into. So that's going to be it for this episode here, the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I want to thank you again for listening, downloading. It means a great deal. Would greatly appreciate it if you have the opportunity to leave a positive review, comment, whatever it may be. Your support, appreciation, it means a lot. It means a great deal, and it helps keep these shows going. So I want to thank you once again for that. Going to be signing off. That's going to be it for me here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm Collin Manley on the GSMC Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.